I just want to do one quick little tutorial about resolution, just real fast. You could just listen, you don't have to follow along. So there's always a little bit of confusion about how the resolution system works, particularly in comparison to that film setting that Maxwell has. And this is actually one of my biggest gripes about it, is the fact that it has to both relate directly to a digital environment, and it has to relate to the film environment. It's like you can't separate the two. So what you probably view when you first open the software is something that looks like this, right? It's set to viewport or some other predefined resolution that has nothing to do with where you want the frame to be precisely. So if you're thinking ahead to what size image you want to produce, you probably want to set a width and height. And the important part is not so much the width and height in millimeters, it's really the width and height in pixels, because that's going to define how big it is when you place it in Photoshop. So let's take a look at like an 8.5 by 11 configuration and just see what that might look like, right? So we have the width by height. So let's say that the width is 11 and the height is, we need to unlock the film ratio and change that to 8.5. Okay, so that changes both the size of the film and the frame that you're seeing, and you won't see this unless you turn the heads-up display on, by the way, if you don't recall that from last class or the class before. But that heads-up display is right here. You can also type in Maxwell heads-up display. So, so we set the millimeters to 11 and 8.5. That decreased and changed my pixel output to 1492 by 1153, which is weird because 1492 was what my pixel output was before. Right? So the pixels scaled with the frame that we chose. So if you want to increase the frame and then modify the pixels of what the output resolution is going to be, you have to first set the frame, then set the output resolution. That's very important. So I personally don't like such a small frame. I like to be a little bit larger. So I'm going to lock that film ratio again and bump this up to 22. So that's double the size. And in fact, I might even increase this to, let's see, if it was 22, we'd add another 1.5. Let's go to, or 5.5. Let's go to 27.5. So that was 2.5 times what it was previously. Still the same proportions, but it's 2.5 times the size of an image, an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So the other thing is with the output resolution now, that has stayed the same. So I want to just kind of quickly point out, let's say this particular 8.5 by 11 sheet is going to be 100 pixels per inch. That means in the width direction, I want 1100 pixels. Does that make sense? 11 inches, 1100 pixels, 100 pixels per inch. So I can go here and try and change this to 1100. Right? So that is going to give me my output resolution that I've selected, and it's going to do it in the frame that I see here. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so that's all you really need to do. You just need to be careful that you set one before the other, because if you set your pixel resolution and then you try to decrease the frame size, it's going to screw you up. And particularly if you do it disproportionately. Is that helpful to see? Because, I mean, like some of you might see like the red frame that shows up. Typically what I do is I set it to viewport, then I take viewport off and I start messing with my film back size, and then I'll go down into resolution and I'll revise the resolution. Okay? Any questions?